Welcome to Regulatory Ramblings. As crypto-related frauds continue to rise, particularly those involving digital asset theft, initial coin offerings, and ransomware attacks, such things are becoming more pervasive and sophisticated. Lawyers, internet security experts, regulators, and law enforcement are under greater pressure to respond swiftly and effectively to a relatively new field they're still struggling with. Ultimately, it's going to require a multidisciplinary and multi-agency approach to provide victims of such frauds with the redress they need and make them whole. Our guest today is hopefully going to shed some light on that, as well as the Crypto Fraud and Asset Recovery Network Hong Kong chapter. Dorothy Siron is the co-managing partner of Zhong Law Firm's Hong Kong office. She's also a proud HKU grad and heads the firm's Litigation and Dispute Resolution practice. Being born and raised in Hong Kong, where she trained as a solicitor before recertifying in Canada, she's also a veteran litigator at this point. Her expertise encompasses white-collar and financial crime in Hong Kong and overseas, as well as cyber fraud, enforcement of foreign judgments, trust and probate matters, family law matters, and the like. And Dorothy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, AJ. Thank you for having me here today. It's a great pleasure to be here. And I'm happy to share some of the information that we want to impart to the industry. So CFAR is, in Hong Kong, is an offshoot of the CFAR Association, which was formed in the UK by industry professionals. Then they will have forensics, accountants, lawyers, barristers, who all pulled together their resources because of this growing sphere of crypto fraud. And now we have chapters in Hong Kong, we have a chapter in Singapore, we have a chapter in the US in Miami. And it is hoped that we will impart a best practices regime so that new players or people who are victims or people who are students can all have a look at what is the shared platform of information, of theory and meeting practice, and we will want to have more sort of like public education of this sort of thing.
Okay. Now, the organization does seem to take that multidisciplinary approach, because you've got solicitors, barristers, IT, security, consultants, law enforcement, and the like. Yeah. So taking that multi-stakeholder approach, has it been enriching? I mean, have you learned things from a different perspective?
Absolutely. And to me, it's a great relief, because as a practitioner, you come across a case, and of course, we practice how to recover the asset. But the point is, there's a limit to how much we can bring to the case without the assistance of forensics or accountants. And it's a great relief to be able to say, okay, I can pull along my co-fellow or my co-member of CFAR who will be able to say, okay, for a case like this, I can, if I have the wallet, the key, I can continue to trace. And it gives me the assurance that I can then render the service that I want to for my client. Because alone, without the forensics, we aren't able to really get into tracing the crypto, perhaps where the crypto may be, finding it, and then hopefully recovering it. Our angle from lawyers' point of view is to enforce the law of how you might be able to get a civil remedy to trace the crypto. We do need the forensics and the accountants to give us that assistance.
Okay. Now, it's hard to talk about Asia because, again, this comes up in any arena of law. The markets are in different levels of development, different levels of sophistication. Regulators have their own data privacy rules. To some extent, there are some turf wars, and the regulatory apparatus varies diverges from country to country. So I know you wanted to share with us the highlights of some of your findings across the region.
Yes, I've done a paper which was published by Basel Institute, but I'm sharing it here because I wanted to also tell people about the arena of what crypto is like in the region. So, I mean, we now have seen, as you said just now, you touched upon, maybe there's a bit of competition. For example, Singapore seemed to be a little bit ahead, but now Hong Kong, after FinTech, made an announcement. We seem to be going a little bit further again. So the arena is, for example, in India, they're developing a new standard of operation for crypto. They are saying that it's neither legal or nor illegal to trade crypto. In El Salvador and in Central Africa, which were the two earliest regions to adopt it as legal tender, how are they doing now? It seems that they are assuring the public that their holdings are safe and not collapsing with the collapse of FTX. But then, of course, they seem to have lost a lot on Bitcoin in 1 year, over 60 million on the Bitcoin bet in 1 year. In terms of Central Africa, they are adopting Bitcoin as legal tender. They plan to tokenize natural resources. In terms of Myanmar, the National Unity Government is saying that they are performing central business digital CBDC functions. In mainland China, as you know, of course, there's a ban on crypto in the sense that they banned the mining of crypto. And then now there's a nationwide extensive crypto ban, including mining, which started from late September 2021. There isn't an express prohibition yet on holding of crypto, but China has done really well. They have their own digital currency, which they introduced with the Olympics, and it seems to be taking form. So much so that Vietnam is now following suit and seeing that there's a lot of extraterritorial exchanges, so they want to follow suit with their own digital currency as well. In Thailand, the Securities and Exchange Commission has proposed banning businesses from engaging in crypto staking and lending activities, but then top crypto trading hubs are among the Asian members. It's legal to trade crypto, but not NFTs, and certain tokens in regulated exchanges. They will likely open a Thai digital exchange in Q3 of 2022, but we don't know. We're watching that space. In Vietnam, the Prime Minister is saying that they need to regulate crypto, and the consumers are being recognized as the biggest adopters of crypto, and it's the second biggest crypto market in ASEAN. In Philippines, the Union Bank of the Philippines has launched a pilot program to introduce crypto assets for their custody and trading services. Singapore, the Monetary Authority of Singapore proposed restricting retail investors from borrowing or using money or using credit cards to buy cryptocurrencies. So they're slightly pulling back a little bit, as you mentioned just now. In terms of
everything's provisional now.
Yes, everything, and with the landscape of crypto, things change daily, as you know, and it is probably the idea of balancing enough legislation to make it safe for the consumer, as opposed to allowing crypto to have the uniqueness of departing from ordinary fiat currency, for example. There are other countries, but for example, most importantly in Hong Kong, during FinTech Week, the government issued a crypto policy that clarified its plan to develop a vibrant sector and ecosystem. And I think it's something that we should really be proud of, because we were a little bit slow to allow all the crypto registration exchanges. But because of the way that we've approached it, we hopefully will be able to create a safe ecosystem for the trading of crypto to embrace this technology. And hopefully, big fallouts hopefully won't happen just around here.
Something the Financial Secretary stressed during FinTech Week was the issue of consumer protection.
Yes.
And again, this is a recurring theme. I don't want to sound trite, but the Lehman mini bond saga taught us there's a difference between wealth and financial sophistication. It begs the question, who should be investing in these assets? And should things go wrong, who will be protected?
Yes. Now, earlier there was some talk about whether or not they wanted to have the professional investor. And now they're moving a little bit slightly away from it. What they're saying is that it's the same business, same risk, same rules. And they're supporting embracing the underlying innovative technology. So I think there's still talk about whether or not it's going to go exactly that way. The paper is coming out from the SFC round about the end of the year to early next year. But what I do want to stress in terms of fraud, is that crypto fraud is a new area of fraud, but fraud has always been pervasive. So for example, the student, there has always been fraud. It is what kind of fraud and what kind of crypto fraud. And I wanted to share a bit of that with the audience because there are many kinds of crypto fraud that one has to differentiate between. Because the point is, it depends on the kind of fraud you're talking about before we consider recovery, before we consider legislation. Where are the types of fraud and what kinds of fraud? So there are frauds that are initial coin offering fraud, where, for example, there could either have been no intention to create the initial coin, and we actually had a Master Zhong throwing money down in Sham Shui Po, if you remember that incident with his Ferrari, and the guy got arrested.
And fraud vitiates all.
Yes. And also, there could be the kind of initial coin offering where they managed to build up the platform, but they couldn't raise the funds. Alternatively, there could be the exchange fraud, where, for example, the exchange wasn't actually an exchange, or the exchange was hacked. So that's a different kind of fraud, you see. Who is going to be your bad actor that you would want to pursue? And how do you pursue? So then, of course, there's the pump and dump tactics, for example, where just much like ordinary penny stock, you create a kerfuffle and say, this is going to be hard, hurry up, buy in. And then the next thing, when enough people buy in, then you will quickly sell. Now, this can only be manipulable if it's a very small market. With a huge crypto market, then perhaps not so much. But one particular kind of crypto, you could, if you created it, got enough confidence, and then you got people to buy in, and then you sold. Another kind of scam is the Ponzi scheme, that during the early days of cryptocurrency, where they would say they would pay you back for your investments right away, 40 cents on the dollar, or ask you to refer clients. And people got money in the beginning, so people were buying in. Then when they accumulated enough, then of course everybody walked off. So that was the Ponzi scam of crypto before. Then there's the phishing scam, where people are saying, I want to sell crypto, but actually they're actually phishing for your personal data. Then, of course, there's the pig butchering, which is some of my colleagues like to talk about, and it's called Sha Drupan, which means they fatten up the pig and then they butcher him. So that involves getting to know somebody, getting them to trust you, and then actually either getting them to invest in crypto, which is real crypto, but the account is in their account, or you're getting their money on the auspices of investing in crypto where there was none to begin with. So there's so much complexity in crypto scams that we have to look at what kind of scam it was before we say, what is the relief? And how do we go about it? And how do the forensics help? It's not just one formula fits all. And in terms of the scams, first thing, of course, is you should report to law enforcement. But law enforcement is out there to try and to enforce the law and to catch the bad actors. For clients of lawyers or forensic accountants, what they want is to seek recovery. So that's asset recovery. Now, without asset recovery through the gateway of the law, of the courts of law, an ordinary person actually can't get recovery through law enforcement per se. The way that we will have to do it is we will have to zone in if we can find out either through the crypto not having moved or through forensics knowing where the keys are and where the crypto has gone. We will launch an injunction. We will get a freezing order. And the courts in Hong Kong have accepted that crypto is an asset, so that they do give a freezing order in one of the latest cases. And when you get a freezing order, then what do? You still have to sue. The freezing order doesn't entitle the third party, who is the subject of the freezing order, to hand you back the crypto, because you're asking him to be the arbiter of who is the bad guy and who's the good guy. That's more than he should do. So you actually have to go through the courts and to say, I'm suing this person because, or this exchange because I was scammed, and the target is the person.
Preclusion, I think.
Yeah. Yes. And then you have to sue that person and then go after where the crypto is. And then get a court order to say, hand that crypto back. Because the person the institution or wherever that is holding the crypto or the asset or whatever it might be, has to have a court order that will forgive them and protect them so that they can give it back to the person who's the victim. So, I mean, that cannot be ignored, and it has to go through the courts in any jurisdiction before a person can just reverse a transaction and give it back to you. They can't.
And that's if the assets sought are within the jurisdiction in question.
And if it is not, that's why we have chapters that will go beyond the territories of Hong Kong. And we want to create more chapters for CFAR so that we can just, at a drop of a phone call, and say, I need some help in certain jurisdictions. Who can I call? Who can I ask? Because in anything like this, that speed of the engagement and speed of the reaction is paramount, because things move so fast now. So without that speed, you actually have to keep chasing. And then there are ways when people try to get rid of cryptos, they keep dumping some. Then the identity of the crypto gets lost again. And so therefore that becomes a difficulty for the forensic accountants.
But even in the situation where, okay, you can rely on help in another jurisdiction, you're still, assuming you've gotten a judgment in Hong Kong, and you're enforcing it in, say, Singapore.
Yes.
You're still throwing yourself on the good graces of the court saying, please enforce this under principles of international comedy, right?
Well, when you have a judgment in Hong Kong, very likely you have to go to Singapore and try to get a judgment in Singapore. Because, say, for example, it was an exchange that was in Singapore. And the way that the exchanges now are, they are all over the place, of course. Right. But, for example, this was an exchange that was in Singapore. The exchange would not be willing to comply with the Hong Kong court order. I would have to get a corresponding Singapore court order. Now, in Hong Kong, we have reciprocal recognition of judgments under different signatories and countries, and not all of them are signatories and countries. So, if it was a corresponding country who was under treaty, then we would regularize the judgment through the process in their courts there. If not, then we would have to start all over again to have a quick and decisive action that will bring about a court order so that we can enforce. So even if you skip to jurisdictions, unlike arbitration, which is, whoever signs on the New York Convention, you will be able to enforce the arbitration there. Under the rule of law in courts and in the Commonwealth, it is not so plug and play, as it were.
No, this is going way back to, I remember studying this in conflicts of law. And
yes,
there's a technology side to it, and then we can't ignore the procedural side, because a lawyer in the common law world is first and foremost a proceduralist. The civil law code jurisdiction people don't fully appreciate that, because then to them it's more about substantive law.
Yes.
From my discussions with the Big Four and others in this area that provide such forensic services, they say when it comes to asset tracing, fundamentally, even when you're dealing with crypto, it's fundamentally the same.
For us,
certain things are going to be different.
Yes.
Because the nature of what you seek is intangible.
Well, it's exactly what I was trying to also highlight to, say, the students or a person who is not in the industry, is that we have always been doing fraud. We've always been doing asset tracing. The fact that crypto is involved is another aspect, it's another angle, it has its own permutations, but it's definitely not new. So as the accountants will tell you, it is an asset as well. But it's just maybe you tune the way you go after it. You still have to go through the normal channels of how you go after asset tracing.
Yeah. The intangible nature of it is I think what people struggle to understand, and as far as forensics,
yes,
for most lawyers, for most law students, the attitude is, if I'm ever in practice and I need to avail myself of those services, there are professionals I can call.
There are, but also there's an issue that engaging professionals in this sort of forensics exercise to trace the crypto is actually a very expensive exercise. So of course the
Do you waive attorney-client privilege if you hire them?
I think we can't ever waive attorney-client privilege, and I think they will also be bound by their own rules of attorney-client privilege. I'm very sure that everybody's very, very careful
I just wondered,
about
does the
that.
privilege extend to them if they become
They will
forensic
have
people
to
become
be,
involved?
because if we instruct them, I'm sure that we also are binding them to our attorney-client
I misspoke, not attorney-client privilege. The common law rules of confidentiality, would that extend to them?
It would extend to them because everybody is very careful about this right now, as the practices have evolved. But first of all, it has to be a very expensive exercise, and then the amount of the loss has to justify hiring forensics. But without the forensics, of course, there are many times when you actually don't have the resources as practitioners, as lawyers, to follow the tracing.
The real money is in the forensics, because I know
I'm sure
I know
that's
I know Kroll.
I'm sure that's true.
Kroll, for example, they're more fixated on forensic accounting than the street level bread and butter, what they got famous for, the private investigator type work.
Well, as the world has evolved with digital assets, I think that you're exactly right, that the forensics are where the real money is, because without that, you actually cannot feel, touch, smell an asset, as it were. It's not a Ferrari sitting in the streets. It's absolutely a whole bunch of locker numbers or wallet numbers, and then there's the hot wallet, there's the cold wallet. So without the forensics, I think it's very difficult to finish the job. So that's why I'm very pleased to be able to say, okay, with CFAR, we welcome as industry people, we welcome all the members. And when we had our launch event at the China Club, it was well attended, and we had people from the industry, from forensics, actually from crypto, people themselves, and it was wonderful. We actually need to merge all that talent in order to follow this ever-evolving landscape.
Are the professions compartmentalized, or do they talk to each other?
Professions.
In this case?
In this case, they do talk to each other. In our case, we encouraged the exchange and the dialogue. And again, going back to CFAR, we hope to be able to host, and coming up throughout the end of this year and the next, webinars, where we will be able to share, to let even non-practitioners have an ear into, what sort of facilities are out there, or what sort of practices are out there. So it's also an educational forum.
Okay. So, if we could quickly talk about the victims.
Yes.
And some people have been burned in crypto, some irreparably so, and but again, there are people that should have known better, but after the fact start alleging a great many things. It's from some of the financial advisors I've spoken to in different places, that when you're making money for your client, it's fine. But if in a down market, that's when you start to get accusations of unauthorized trading, excessive commissions, churning, unauthorized access, that sort of thing. And there are times where there is a market downturn and it's no one's fault. But again, as we saw with the Lehman situation, some victims were more sympathetic than others.
Well, just take, for example, this very recent one, for example, say the FTX fallout. So the victims will have a choice. Will I say, I was duped because I got into this by myself? Or can I blame my service provider, a banking institution, for suggesting it to me? Who is going to be the person that I can sue? So yes, victims come in all shapes and sizes. And then, as you said in the Lehman fallout, it depends on whether or not it was the choice one makes by themselves. Maybe they were duped into making it. So there's a choice of who they might sue. And of course, deeper pockets means that that's the best person you can sue. Or are they actually even going to claim on their insurance? Because there has been a certain rise of insurance for this arena, which is very, yes. And it was to me because I thought to myself, for the crypto, can they have insurance? And I have heard that it's an up and coming thing. So I'm not very familiar with the ambit of that. But if there's something that you can claim insurance on, then well, I mean, there's another recovery route for you.
Yeah, I mean, and in this case, even someone who's 5 years away from retirement, say, should know better. But, and you would think that the SFC, people, I remember speaking to people at the SFC at the time, and off the record, some of them said to me, I was writing it off as typical Hong Kong greed. And you might say it's certain things are innate to human nature, but typical Hong Kong greed, wanting fast money, wanting to get rich quick. And what this person said to me was, okay, but if you're someone who's 5 or 6 years away from retirement, can you really begrudge them for wanting a few percent more yield, because that would make a world of difference to your retirement? See, people have changed, and I don't know if it's just a sign of a developed society. People expect to be taken care of more. But, I mean, the Hong Kong I grew up in, and you may remember this, if people lost money in the market, people were mature enough to accept it and take it on their shoulders and acknowledge what happened and learn and move on. It seems to me people expect redress from the regulators, and there seems to be a failure in understanding the SFC is here to protect you in the sense that they will provide all the disclosures you need to inform yourself before you.
And exactly as you said, and this is the opportunity where I can say that Hong Kong should be rather grateful that the SFC have taken the position that they do, have kept a rein on things as they have, because there's always a blame game. But if there is regulation, and there will be some protection for the investor, failing which, if you say, can you blame that person for throwing it in? Well, if at least there's a regulated regime, then whatever they do try to throw in will have its checks and balances, let's call it, rather than to say it's like a free-for-all and you throw it in and it disappear overnight. It's the same as stocks. It's the same as any shares, isn't it? But because crypto is sexy, it's new, it's alluring, but there is not enough education on it, that a lot of people feel very lured by it, by the very quick dollar, by the uprise that it had at the beginning, at inception. There was somebody who said to me that they had put in 100,000 US, and at one point it became 6 million, and I said that's bonkers. But of course there's the lure, but without the legislation, without the regulation, then of course people will be lured by that. But at the end of the day, I'm very pleased that Hong Kong is going the way it is with regulation, because you cannot stop the investor. You cannot stop the person being lured by this. What you can do is to try to protect them.
Does Hong Kong's approach traditionally has been wait and see?
It has been.
Is that always a good thing versus, say, like if we were having this discussion 2 years ago, we'd say it was between Singapore and Hong Kong, and Singapore's in pole position, okay? But things can flip on a dime, right? Things can change very quickly, because now we're talking about VARA, the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority in the UAE, in Dubai, the first of its kind. But even still, simply having a regulatory body can lull people into a full sense of comfort, because in that instance it's untested.
Yes, but I think that the way that the SFC are approaching it now is they're being very safe, they're being very careful. They have said, same risks, same investors, same legislation, same rules. And I think that that's probably a very tried and true formula, and I'm glad of it. For example, in the FTX fallout, now even FATF is saying, instead of having every 10 annual checks and balances, they're now saying let's have annual checks and balances. So I mean, instead of but that's a bit of a catch up, isn't it? Instead of catching up. So what we are now saying is that they wanted to have a very holistic and controlled ecology before they allow anything to wreck the economy. And I think that the way that they've approached this is absolutely commendable. I'm looking forward to reading the paper which I know they are now preparing since the fintech announcement. No, the SFC here. But the fallout recently has also hit not only the crypto market, it also has hit regular traditional finance markets, because people have to pull away from their regular finances just to plug holes there everywhere. So the whole fallout from the FTX is I mean, it hasn't even stopped pinging right now. So we can't see the end of it. It's actually just
the smoke hasn't cleared.
It hasn't cleared at all. So we don't know yet.
Okay. Well, that concludes the live portion of our discussion with Dorothy. Thank you again for tuning in.